Okay, imagine learning language, but maybe not like you'd expect, not word by single word,
Right.
but maybe more like downloading whole phrases, complete musical scores almost.
That's a great way to put it. That's really the heart of what we're talking about today. Gestalt language processing.
Mm-hmm. It kind of challenges that typical, building block idea of how language works.
It absolutely does.
So today we're really diving deep into this. We're using the insights of Dr. Jaime Hoerricks, who is a Gestalt language processor at GLP and also an educator.
Yeah, their article, "We Are Not Here to Perform," it's incredibly insightful. It gives us this personal reflection on communication, connection, and importantly, respect.
Exactly. So that's our guide. Our mission, really, is to explore how GLPs experience communication, why those traditional ways we expect people to talk might not fit.
And how they naturally develop language. How can we actually support that?
So Gestalt language processing, just quickly, what is it without getting too technical?
Okay, so basically think of it like this. Instead of starting with ball, go up and putting them together.
Right, the little bricks.
Yeah. GLPs often start with the whole phrase, the gestalt, like maybe time to go outside, or a line from a TV show they love. These chunks carry a lot of meaning for them.
Got it. Chunks first, details later, maybe?
Sort of, yeah. They internalize these meaningful units of language from their experiences.
Okay, and this sets up a contrast, doesn't it, between how Dr. Hoerricks sees GLP development as relational, experience-based,
Hmm.
and the more common focus on, well, performance.
Exactly. That's a central theme in their work, this idea that we often expect communication to look a certain way, to be a kind of performance, rather than understanding the different ways it can actually grow.
Let's dig into Dr. Hoerricks' own experience then. Back in the 1970s, school was very teacher-led.
Hmm. Very structured, lots of direct instruction.
And interestingly, Dr. Hoerricks says this structure, these clear routines, the expected phrases, it actually helped. It provided a sort of scaffold, even with internal struggles happening.
Yeah, that's such a key point. It gave a predictable framework, which is quite different from a lot of modern educational approaches, right?
How so?
Well, think about the emphasis now on student-led projects, spontaneous group work, quick back and forth discussions.
Mhm.
Dr. Hoerricks finds that kind of environment, that pressure to perform conversation in these immediate analytical ways, can actually be really alienating for a GLP, especially if their language system is still developing those analytic skills.
Like being asked to improvise before you know the tune.
Exactly. And it means that sometimes the very things that would help a GLT, like clear models, maybe repeating phrases, narrating what's happening.
Things that might seem less natural in some contexts.
Right. Those supportive strategies sometimes get discouraged because the focus is so much on spontaneous original output.
So this points to a really fundamental difference in how language is built for GLPs. Dr. Hoerricks talks about it being relational. What does that mean?
It means language isn't learned in a vacuum. It grows out of shared experiences. It's tied to emotions, to context, to relationships.
Okay.
They internalize these gestalts, these chunks, because they're embedded in something meaningful that happened with someone. It really echoes thinkers like Vygotsky, you know?
The idea that learning happens through social interaction.
Exactly. Language emerges within that socially mediated activity. It's not just about hearing a word and repeating it. It's about the whole shared scene, the shared feeling around it.
Like learning a dance together, not just the steps in isolation.
Perfect analogy. So the meaning is rich. It's lived.
Which makes that drilling performance approach seem, well, off the mark.
Yeah.
Constantly asking direct questions, forcing turn-taking.
It really misses the point, according to Dr. Hoerricks. It doesn't tap into how GLP language systems actually take root and strengthen.
And that sounds stressful.
Hugely. Dr. Hoerricks says GLPs thrive on belonging, on connection, not performance pressure. They talk about their own childhood, feeling this intense pressure to answer instantly.
Any pause was seen as wrong.
Yeah, like an error. But their brain just didn't retrieve language in that neat, linear, instant way. And that lack of understanding created a lot of anxiety.
Wow, you can really feel that. And they connect this to today's classrooms too, right? The ones that really value that quick, collaborative chat.
Absolutely. If a child needs more processing time, maybe more structure, they risk being seen as lacking soft skills or not being socially competent.
Which is completely missing the underlying difference in processing.
Exactly. And Dr. Hoerricks brings up a broader point here about societal values. They mention, for instance, how comments like those historically made by figures like RFK Jr. about autistic individuals can reflect this narrow view.
Where value is tied only to certain kinds of, well, normative performance.
Precisely. And that automatically excludes or devalues people who communicate or process differently. It becomes this one-size-fits-all expectation.
And Dr. Hoerricks argues this demand for immediate performance, it actually undermines learning.
Yes, by pushing people beyond their zone of proximal development, Vygotsky again. You're demanding a skill before the foundations are properly laid with the right kind of support.
So it turns communication into a test, not a connection.
You got it. It becomes a performance standard, not a bridge between people.
Okay, so if that performance model is counterproductive, what does help GLPs build communication? What worked for Dr. Hoerricks?
It often comes down to less pressure. Things like declarative statements, just stating facts or observations without demanding a reply.
Like, oh look, the red car, instead of what color is the car?
Exactly. Or gentle comment. Talk right now.
Allows them to absorb the language.
Yes. Absorb it, connect it to the experience, internalize those gestalts at their own pace without that spotlight of needing to produce an answer immediately.
Makes sense. And what about choices?
Ah, yes. Embedded choices, also really key. Instead of an open-ended, what do you want, offering something like, do you want the apple or the banana?
Gives them the language model within the question.
And agency. It invites language, makes it feel possible, not compulsory.
Dr. Hoerricks uses these techniques in their teaching, right, with real results.
Oh, absolutely. They share these powerful examples of students, maybe previously labeled nonverbal or disengaged, who start to open up when the communication style shifts, when the adults start narrating more, using those declaratives, offering those embedded choices.
And their echolalia, the repetition.
Yes.
That becomes meaningful.
Yes. It stops being seen as just meaningless repetition and starts being understood as a genuine attempt to connect, to use the language chunks they have in a meaningful way. It becomes a bridge.
That's fascinating. It sounds like it connects to other learning theories, too.
Definitely. You mentioned Bruner earlier, his idea of formats, those predictable social routines, that fits perfectly.
Like peekaboo or bath time routines.
Exactly. Those provide a stable scaffold. And again, Vygotsky's emphasis on shared, mediated experiences, it all points to creating this rich, supportive, experienced language environment, not just drilling isolated skills.
Now, Dr. Hoerricks also voices some concerns, particularly about how speech-language pathology is sometimes presented, maybe especially online.
Yes, there's a concern about a potential deficit view creeping in, sometimes maybe misunderstanding the natural stages of language acquisition for GLPs, what's often called NLA, natural language acquisition.
Also, what's the worry?
The worry is that things like using scripts, retrieving whole gestalts, which are actually typical and vital parts of GLP development.
Get seen as problems to be fixed.
Sometimes, yeah. Or that the only valid goal presented is that spontaneous, analytic, back-and-forth conversation, as if the GLP way is just a detour to be corrected.
And marketing that asks things like, will my child ever be conversational?
Right. Dr. Hoerricks points out that this can really prey on parents' fears. It pushes towards normalization, potentially leading families to therapies that don't actually align with or respect the child's natural developmental path.
Which could end up being harmful, trying to force a fit that isn't there.
Exactly. The message from Dr. Hoerricks is strong. When we offer language freely, when we narrate, when we give choices without demanding instant performance, we're not slowing things down. We're nurturing development in the way that works for that child.
Meeting them where they are.
Meeting them where they are, respecting their communication style.
Dr. Hoerricks shares a personal story that really drives this home, doesn't it? From college.
Oh, yeah. The speech and debate course, it sounds like it was incredibly challenging.
Because the expectation was all about that quick, linear, spontaneous argument.
Totally. And the carefully learned gestalts, the scripts that had served Dr. Hoerricks well in other contexts, just felt inadequate, crumbled under that specific kind of pressure, led to misunderstandings.
Really shows how the environment dictates whether communication feels possible or impossible.
Absolutely. But then there's the positive story, the flip side, Melody, the student.
Right, the one who loved her artwork.
Yes. By letting Melody talk about her passion, her art, on her terms.
Yeah.
That's where her language blossomed. That's where she built confidence and found her voice.
Because she was leading with her strength, her interests.
Exactly. It wasn't about performing a generic conversation. It was about sharing something meaningful to her.
And this connects back to other thinkers, too.
Yeah, people like Tomasello language as inherently social, driven by intention, growing from that shared focus.
Mm-hmm.
And Rogoff's work on guided participation, how learning happens best within supportive relationships and meaningful activities, not just through instruction and testing.
So boiling it down, what are the really crucial takeaways from Dr. Hoerricks' perspective?
First and foremost, I think, is the mindset shift. GLPs aren't broken communicators, they're different
Their
communicators.
way is valid, layered, meaningful,
Absolutely, even if it looks different from the outside.
and the environment matters hugely.
Critically, we need spaces where language is offered, not demanded, where communication is about presence, about connection, not just passing a verbal test.
And those practical strategies, declaratives, commentary, embedded choices.
They're powerful bridges. They build fluency naturally within those moments of shared attention, shared stories.
Dr. Hoerricks also makes an interesting point about how Western psychology has sometimes sidelined these more relational approaches.
Yeah, a brief but important observation that maybe our focus on the individual, on quantifiable performance, has sometimes made us less attuned to these more humanistic, connection-based ways of understanding development, especially neurodivergent development.
So the core request is pretty clear then.
It is. It's a call to understand, to meet GLPs within their framework, to adjust our expectations rather than trying to remake them.
As they say, the goal isn't to fix the GLP.
It's to broaden our own definition of what communication truly is.
So wrapping up this deep dive, the message that really resonates from Dr. Hoerricks' work is just how vital it is to recognize and, more importantly, respect these different pathways in language development, especially for Gestalt language processors.
Yeah, that focus on performance over connection, it can really backfire. It can put up walls where we should be building bridges.
It definitely makes you think, doesn't it? As a listener, you might reflect on your own interactions. How often do we, maybe unconsciously, impose those standard conversational expectations?
Mm-hmm. And could that inadvertently be making things harder for someone who communicates or processes differently?
And maybe we can leave you with this final thought, sparked by Dr. Hoerricks. What does it really take to listen differently?
Yeah. Maybe the people we thought weren't communicating or weren't communicating enough have actually been speaking all along.
Maybe we just need to learn how to tune in to adjust our way of hearing.